This episode is brought to you in part by Audible.com. With more than 150,000 titles to choose from, there's something for you and everyone. You can listen to all of your favorite audiobooks on your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or other MP3-empowered device. And now Audible is going to give you a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook download just for listening to one of our shows. All you have to do is go to www.audibletrial.com/IRNerdivore and sign up today. That's www.audibletrial.com/IRNerdivore. Additional funding is provided by Geek Fan Expo, September 5th, 6th, and 7th, 2014 at the Doubletree Hotel in Dearborn, Michigan. You can get your tickets online now at www.geekfanexpo.com. That's www.geekfanexpo.com. And by the support of listeners like you. This show is intended for all audiences, but some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener caution is advised. You're listening to The Quest, the show where we talk about role-playing in all of its forms, from tabletop to LARP and even cosplay. I am your host, Dr. RPG Jeff Harvey, and you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter at IRNerdivore or visit us on the web at IRNerdivore.com. Thank you very much for hitting the download button today and listening to our show. If you like what you hear, you can follow us on IRNerdivore, or you can find us on iTunes and subscribe. Just search for IRNerdivore or the IRNerdivore Network, and you'll find us there. You've got about 3 episodes. There's 3 different shows you can find on there, and you can feel free to download and listen to those episodes whenever you want. We have got more and more episodes coming out, of course. We've got The Quest, which we'll be getting new shows for. We've also got the Dark Match podcast, which is all about professional wrestling, if you like that show. It should be I really enjoy making that program. So, and we also have IRNerdivore, the show about all things geek. So we've been doing a lot of live shows with that one recently at conventions, which has really been a lot of fun. Like, I can't really express how much fun it is to do a live convention podcast recording. It's one of the best things I've ever done. But anyway, the podcast of The Quest is back, sort of. I know it's been a long time since we had an episode up, but I just wanted to, but I am here today, and I just wanted to give you a few tips about GMing and let you know a little bit more about what we're doing as far as the Quest goes in the future. Before we talk too much about everything else, I do want to thank everybody out there for listening. You guys have made the show a huge success, despite the fact that we are barely ever getting shows out. You guys have been just consuming the show like rabidly. I can't believe the number of downloads this show still gets, despite the fact that we haven't had a new episode up since mid to late April. So almost 2 months, and we're still getting what I consider to be extremely good download numbers. So thank you guys. You are the reason we do this. That, and I have nothing better to do sometimes. I really do enjoy talking about role-playing games. But you guys are the big reason. So thank you very much for your downloads. Don't forget to help your friends learn about the show. Tell them, have them tell their friends, and so on and so forth. On down the road, let everybody in the world know about the show. We are currently being heard in, I think, 25 countries. It's don't quote me on that exactly. I know that we've been getting a lot of countries lately, and I'm not even sure all 25 of those countries even speak English. So, gracias. Anyway, I do want to mention that the Quest has been down for a while because partially I've had some equipment issues, which are now resolved. We've been doing a lot of conventions, which now we're doing live podcasts from those conventions. So that should make the IRNerdivore show a bit more popular. Hopefully, and I mean, not that it needs to be more popular. It's very popular as it is, but I'm always up for more listeners because I like people to be able to talk about the things that they are passionate about. And one of the things I am passionate about is pretty much everything nerdy. And in particular, role-playing games. I am extremely passionate about role-playing games. However, the show has suffered a bit, and that is partially because I think most of my companions, my coterie of companions, as it were, have talked themselves out of the RPG world. They don't like RPGs. They still love them. We still play them. But they don't have the depth of knowledge for some of the subjects. So we've been rehashing a lot of the same old topics, and I want to kind of branch away from that. So we've been working on ways to to get away from that mentality. And there's a lot of things that we can still talk about. There's a lot of subjects still open and on the table. We can talk about storytelling and GMing, which I think is a huge portion. There's volumes to be spoken about storytelling and GMing. LARPing, GM LARPing, LARPing of GMs. GM LARPing, no, GMing of LARPs. That's the word I'm looking for, as well as just LARPing in general. Cosplays. We've been going to a lot of conventions recently. We've been encountering a lot more cosplayers, and we've learned a lot more about cosplaying. I'd like to get some cosplayers on the show and talk about cosplaying, and I'd like to talk a bit about the challenges of staying in character for an entire show, especially these big long shows like the Steam Dream Expo we were just at. They have casts for shows like that, as well as the Michigan Renaissance Festival and the New York Renaissance Festival and any of the big Ren fairs really. And you have cast out there that cosplay all the time and are in character 24/7. Well, 24, however long it is the show is open for every day. And I'd like to talk to those guys about what it takes to be able to do that. As well as I'd like to talk about video game RPGs. I really like to get into the 1980s and 90s 8-bit and 16-bit RPGs. I think I really like those, and I'd like to talk more about them. I want to talk a lot about the MMO market, Ultima Online and SWTOR and Final Fantasy Online and all these other games that are out there that we can talk about, World of Warcraft and so on and so forth. But I also want to talk about things like specific genres of game and specific systems and settings of games. And I want to review various RPG books and indie games and talk game theory with folks. And this is something that a lot of the people that have been on my show in the past really aren't up to the challenge for. Not that they're not great people. I do love everybody that's ever on my show, and they do a fantastic and wonderful job. But they have mostly spent their time on the player end. And there's only so much you can talk about really on the player end other than getting into the actual games themselves and talking about the games that we're playing. And we could do some of that, of course, but there's so many other things to talk about, and we definitely want to do that. If I would like to get a bunch of people from the gaming industry on as guests and talk to them about their games that they run, the ones they play, their favorite games, what got them into the things that they do, why are they gamers, why do they get into the gaming industry, all the things that will help you better understand what it means to be a role player and how to do really quality storytelling from both a player perspective and a GM perspective. I think it's really important. If you or somebody wants to be a part of the discussion, or there is someone in particular you want on the show, or something you want us to talk about, a rule you want advice on, any games you're running that you want help with or any kind of advice on, we'd be happy to help you. And your problem can probably help somebody else with their problem as well. So please email us at podcast@irnerdivore.com. You can also get on the show if you want to be on this show with us. We are now set up to do a lot of online podcasting, so we can do a lot of call-in type Skype and mostly we use Google Hangouts. And speaking of Google Hangouts, we're looking to in the future start doing video podcasting on YouTube through Google Hangouts at Google Hangouts on the Air. So if you are interested in being a part of those, that's also something that we can talk about. In addition, we are, as I said before, we are starting to do a lot more conventions. So if you would like to see us at a convention near you, let us know, and we'll try to get a hold of the convention and see what we can do. Also, if you're on a programming team for a convention and you want someone to help fill some content for you, we are able to do anything content-wise for role-playing games and the Iron Divore podcast, which is really anything geeky at all, and I mean everything geeky. And of course, we have the Dark Match podcast as well, and we can fill some pretty good time. And it also helps promote you guys, and it helps us get the word out about the show, and it reaches our fans in a more personal level, which is something I really like to do. I really do enjoy meeting you guys, and I'm always astounded when I find somebody who's listened to the show and enjoys it. So again, thank you to everybody out there. And again, if you want to reach us about a convention in your area, please again write us at podcast@irnerdivore.com, and you can talk to me and we can figure it out. So on that note, I do want to get kind of a short episode here. I've already talked for like 10 minutes, and I know I'm like burning through time here with you guys, but I want to talk a little bit about some GM tips, and I've got 20 tips for you These should go pretty quickly. I hopefully won't ramble too much more than I already have. So the number one tip, not the best tip, but of course there are the golden rules in GMing. There's everybody has to have fun, and there's the GM makes up the rules, so don't fight with the GM. We're not going to talk about the golden rules today. We're going to talk about 20 additional tips. The number one tip I think we should talk about is that names are extremely important. Name your NPCs, name the landmarks in your area, name everything, and write these names down so you remember what they are. It's extremely important that you know what they are, because if you don't know the name of something, then you can't bring it back up later, which is one of the things we want to do again. But also it's a good idea to keep 5 or 6 names on tap, as it were, so that you can just whip one out when you need to. Like if somebody does something, a player does something unexpected and goes and asks to talk to somebody that you had not originally planned on being there, don't hold them back and keep them from doing that. Allow them to, and just grab one of your pre-made names and throw it out there, and do a couple voices and whatever you got to do. Also, don't forget that players love familiarity, and they love going to the same old places and seeing the same things that they'd already seen, and revisiting past events and characters. The nostalgia of going back to something that you saw in the first 3 or 4 gaming sessions when you're now 23rd level or 50th level or whatever level you get to in your game, or however it goes. If your players rescued somebody in like the 3rd gaming session that you guys ever did, it would be something that you can bring that character back later on and show them that the world is deep and truly engaging, and that the lives of these other people matter, and that the actions that the players had have a lasting effect on the setting as a whole. I think it's a huge deal to players to be able to see that kind of thing. And I think it's really fun for the GM to write that as well. That's something to keep in mind. Also, don't forget that dice rolling is boring. Well, to be fair, dice rolling is actually a lot of fun, but it's boring for everybody not rolling dice. So you want to keep your dice rolling to an absolute minimum. You want to make sure that the flow of the game is consistently fast, and that you don't get bogged down with too much dice rolling, especially in games that the combat is already slow, like Dungeons and Dragons or the West End Games D6, which is still fast for its era, but it's pretty slow when you have to do all the adding and subtracting and everything else. You want to make sure that you've got really streamlined combats, and you want to make sure that the energy level is there. And the more dice you roll, the slower the overall combat is going to take, and the overall interaction is going to be less engaging. So make sure that dice rolling is kept to a minimum. Dice rolling can get boring for anybody not rolling the dice. Also, you want to offer distinct options from which players can choose from. A lot of times you can write a story that is very complicated, convoluted even, and your players can get lost in the shuffle. And you want to make sure that when there's a time that there's a concise option that they have to make a decision, and you've got 3 or 4 choices that you want them to go down. You want them to choose one of 3 choices. Lay those choices out. No, don't be blunt about it, but lay those 3 choices out to them and give them an idea of what the consequences might be for choosing each one of those things, and then let them decide. Worlds can be huge and somewhat overwhelming for players who don't understand your vision necessarily. So you want to make sure that you give them the option to, you want to give them the optimal amount of resources to make the decisions that you want them to make and keep the story flowing. It is all about the story flowing forward. You also want to reward player cleverness. Do not punish player cleverness. There's times when the player is going to outthink you. They're going to make a suggestion that you hadn't thought of, and they're going to do an end round around everything you thought of and every piece of storyline that you did. You can do one of 2 things in the situation. You can either slap them down right there and crush their dreams and really throw them out of the moment and punish their creativity, or you can find a way to reward it. It might not necessarily have to be that they succeed in what they wanted to do, but give them the opportunity to have that thing that they wanted to do maybe actually have an effect. It's beneficial to you as a storyteller, because you never know, the idea they have might actually be better than the idea that you had, and you can do a lot with their idea to expand the storyline in general, to take the story in a direction you had not anticipated it going. And don't be crazy. Don't add crazy just for the sake of crazy. This is a huge mistake a lot of people make. Crazy can help tell a story, but when crazy becomes confusing, you'll actually slow everything down. Or when the players have to rely on a crazy NPC in order to get their information and move on, you're going to want to have some way of getting the players out of a situation where the crazy is the only thing they can deal with. You also want to be, as a player, you want to be sure that you're not playing something that is so crazy that it's actually distracting the player or the other players or the GMs. And this is one of my biggest issues with people playing Malkavians in the World of Darkness game. Most people don't play Malkavians very well. They play them like crazy, stupid, whatever. It's another problem with playing children. Can be a problem playing a game of children in a large group of non-children. It can lead you to being a problem for the rest of the players and not being fun to play with. While it might be fun to play that character, it can quickly become not fun to play with. So you want to make sure you avoid that. And this is big for the GM as well. The GM can't run something that gets crazy to the point of not being fun for the players to interact with anymore. Plan a significant character moment for about every 2 hours of gameplay. And what I mean by significant character moment is either a combat or a great RP with an NPC or a situation where the PCs can really get together and roleplay, or a chase scene, or really anything like that. And the reason you want to do it for about every 2 hours is because if you have about a 15 to 20 minute significant event, that will give your players about 90 minutes worth of role playability. So if you have a huge chase scene, it could last 30 minutes or so, about 20 to 30 minutes for the chase scene, or a good combat can last 15 to 20 minutes. And assuming your pacing is good and everything else, you can have them be a lot shorter or a lot longer if you need them to be, but about 30 minutes is the most you want to do for a combat, because that's when people start getting bored. But that gives them things to think about, and they can role play amongst themselves for another 90 minutes or so. And that gives you about every 2 hours that you can do something. Now in LARPing, it's a little different, and I will go a quick aside on a few of these for LARPing, and I'll just keep them real quick. In LARPing, you want to have something that happens about every 4 hours. You want to have the PCs engaged about once every 4 hours. And this isn't to say that you have to run an NPC every 4 hours, or that you can only run an NPC once every 4 hours. You need to engage different groups of players at different times about every 4 hours, which means you need to run something about every 2 hours towards different groups. And the reason this is because groups, well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but groups form in LARPs, factions form in LARPs, niches or cliques or whatever you want to call them form in LARPs. It's just a natural aspect of human life and human social behavior. We can talk about that more too in another episode, but you want to make sure that the players have something to talk about between encounters. And the best thing for them to talk about is encounters and the politics and everything else. Now, you don't have to have a combat every 2 hours or every 4 hours. You need to have something to engage the players. So it could be a trap, or it could be a message, or it could be an NPC, or it could be a huge event that happens in the middle of town, or whatever. It doesn't have to be a combat NPC either. It could be anything. It just has to be something that shows the players that the world isn't just them sitting outside in tents or hanging around fires, because it gets boring for them. And a lot of players will avoid the interactions if they don't need it. So if I, for example, don't want to deal with a combat, I don't need to. I can see that the combat happened, and I can talk about that combat without being a part of it. And now I'm engaged by someone else's engagement. So that's why I don't need one every 2 hours. I can do every 4. In 2 hours after that engagement happens, I probably, would be interested in seeing an NPC come out and talk about, I don't know, anything, tell a story or sing a song or bring some political machinations to the event, or however you do it. But players will pick and choose. And this is true also in tabletop, although you don't give them as much opportunity to pick and choose because it's tabletop. It's fewer people. You are going to want to make each character the hero in at least one adventure. Really, you'd like to make them a hero in every adventure. You'd like to make each of them have their role in every adventure, but that's just not reasonable. So one of the things I suggest is that if you have a long-term campaign, or you have even short-term events, setting stories, whatever. You can have the players each get their moment in the sun. And then you can take the information you get from their moment in the sun, their character development. It's very important that characters get development. You can take that information and you can lead it towards the final scene in the adventure. And if you do that, I think the players will actually, that's the kind of thing that players talk about 10, 15, 20 years down the road that, they're going to tell their friends about. And that's the kind of thing that you want people to remember, is their moments in the sun. So make sure that you give them their moment in the sun, both in the smaller adventures and in the final event. Also, you can speed things up too by letting the mundane events take place off stage. You don't have to show the players eating every gaming session. You don't have to have them find lodging every time. It's like they can just say, I find the inn, I pay the money, and I whatever. You don't have to have, in Vampire, you don't have to have them feed every morning. That's not something you have to show every time on screen, as it were, quote unquote, on screen. One of the things that you can do, like there's a game, it was Conan by Mongoose Publishing, that actually had a rule that anytime the players went into town, they lost half their on-hand income right there on lodging and food and whatever other activities, quote unquote, activities that they wanted to engage in. And it was just assumed that they were carousing or doing whatever it is that they do. And now you can limit that, of course, if the players are saving up to buy a huge breastplate or a village or whatever it is they're looking to buy. You don't have to take half their money, but take a percentage every gaming session when they go into a town or whatever, so they can have the things without having to be on screen. It doesn't have to be done that way. Also, you want to make sure that you, as the GM, take the game as seriously as you want your players to take the game. If you treat it like DuckTales, it's going to be like DuckTales. If you treat it like Phineas and Ferb, it's going to be like Phineas and Ferb. That's just the way it is. You as a GM need to make sure that you don't screw around for 2 hours every gaming session, because then your players are going to screw around for 2 hours every gaming session, and they're not going to take things seriously. And this is something I am particularly guilty of, and it's unfortunate because for me, it comes down partially to we only game really once a week right now, and that to me is a problem. And I'll explain more about that later, but it means that you don't catch up as often. In short, it means we don't catch up as often. So we spend the first bit of time catching up, and that detracts from the rest of the game. And time is very precious to the players, and it's very precious to the characters, and it's very precious to everything. So you want to make sure that you, as the GM, don't slow everything down with your shenanigans, and take the game seriously, as serious as you want them to. So also, you are going to want to let the character's strengths override player weaknesses. Not everybody knows how to fish. Not everybody knows how to go spelunking. Not everyone knows how to build fire. Not everyone knows how to hunt or track, or, not everyone is Sherlock Holmes. You want to make sure that occasionally the character's strengths, the paper power of the character, can bolster the player's weaknesses. We do this generally to escape, right? Role-playing is about jumping into another world and telling a story, but not as yourself. And this is one of the problems I have with LARPing as well, which I'll get to in half a second. If the character doesn't understand something, if the player doesn't understand something, if the player doesn't understand it, but their character has the skill, they have a super intelligent character, let them make a roll, make it a short, quick roll, and help them out. Help the players reach the conclusions you want them to reach, because that's part of the collaboration of storytelling. And sometimes the player will be strong enough on their own to be able to do more things than you wanted them to. They'll be more creative, and that will help you enhance their game as well. But don't let a player's weakness slow down your story. That's what character sheets are for. That's why we have skill points. And in LARPing, there is a huge controversy in a lot of LARPs about player skill versus character sheet skill. And it seems to be a naughty word or a naughty thing to have paper power, as people call it. Well, this is wrong. This is an escape. Not everyone has the time to commit to full-time training and building of armor and all these other things that some people do. And while I understand that if you are an armorer or you do fight in the SCA, you have a better opportunity to fight, and you're going to be a better fighter. there needs to be some level of middle ground here. Just because you've been fighting for 25 years doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have time to fight for 25 years, doesn't have the time to practice for 25 years, can't at least be somewhat comparable. You're still going to be a better fighter than me. You're still going to outfight me in every situation. But that doesn't mean that I can't be an effective fighter in the game. And I think that nobody goes to play a role-playing game to play themselves. That just isn't how it works. You can play an us character, but you don't want to just be you. You want to be more than you. So keep that in mind. I think that's very important. One of the things I don't necessarily agree with, but I can see a point to it, is that you want to always have a current copy of the player's character sheets. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the players should be responsible for their character sheets. However, in the past, I have been responsible for them. I have actually taken the character sheets and stored them for the players. And the reason I did that was because it gave me an opportunity to actually read the character sheets between gaming sessions and learn more about the skill sets that they had and their advantages and disadvantages and flaws and things like that. But for the most part, the way it works in my games is if you forget your character sheet, your character dies. I mean, if you lose it, if you forget it one gaming session, we probably just won't play. But if you lose your sheet, you're just going to die. Your character's dead. Start again. So you want to make sure people are very aware of where their sheets are and that they have them. Don't let people play off memory, because that never works right. It's never going to be right. So don't let them do that. Really, it all comes down to managing time. All of the tips that I'm giving you really come down to managing time, in the long run anyways, is what they come down to. And time is a very precious element when it comes to role-playing games. You only have so long to tell the story each night. And the majority of role-playing game sessions should fall somewhere around 4 to 6 hours a night. That is to say that you can tell the best, most concise stories and maintain people's attention span for about 4 hours during role-playing games. I think 6 hours is actually a more entertaining session. 8 hours, it's a little long. 12 hours is doable, but I don't recommend it. And anything less than 2 hours is really just not enough time to really show any real growth for the characters or any kind of concise, any long-term story for the players themselves. You want to be able to keep that balance between too short to be able to get anything done and too long and you lose their interest. Although, honestly, I find it entertaining to play a game that eventually just kind of winds down or devolves into we're not playing anymore, we're just kind of hanging out. That's a fun experience to me. And it means that you got the majority of the story told. You got everything that everybody wanted to do for that gaming session done. I prefer to end the game on a high note or on a cliffhanger type of thing, just because it makes them want to come back for the next. It keeps people excited for the next game, but it's not right for every gaming session either. Just remember that if you aren't having fun, no one will be having fun. You're the GM, and if you're not having fun with the game, then nobody else is going to be able to enjoy the storyline that you're supposed to be telling. Don't let yourself fall into a situation where you don't enjoy the game anymore, where you resent playing, or you resent GMing. It doesn't help you run a good story. It doesn't help you tell a good scenario, and it doesn't help the players really have any fun either. So you want to make sure that you have fun. And the reason I say this, and this is huge, I don't enjoy gaming on a weekly schedule. I like gaming weekly. I don't like gaming on a weekly schedule. I prefer to game whenever the creativity strikes me that's what I want to game. I don't do a lot of pre-planning writing. I kind of just I come up with some ideas and I run with them. I see where they go and I flesh them out as the game progresses. And to me, that is a good way of telling a story. Now, it's not for everyone, and it's not an easy thing to do. And it also means that I can't really do a lot of the pre-packaged adventures, and I can't really sit down and be on a schedule for everyone else. So if we only game on Mondays and a few weeks go by where I'm just not having a good Monday, or I had a long weekend or whatever, I get to the point anyway, where my mental capacity for running the game isn't there. I didn't write any story. I don't have any ideas planned out, and I don't feel like running the game. And if we're only gaming on Monday and I don't run the game that day, then I feel like I'm disappointing my players. So after a while, that begins to become a burden on me, and it makes me even less likely to want to write something or run anything, because I lose the passion for the story that we're doing, because it's a big circle. You can understand, I'm making the players feel upset, and it's upsetting me and everything else, and the storylines fail and the game fades away and you never finish your story. That sucks. Don't do that. I do that occasionally. It's terrible. I understand it. I recognize the problem, and I can help you avoid that problem, even if I can't necessarily always avoid it myself. There are a lot of ways to get around that kind of thing, but remember that if you're not having fun, don't force yourself to run the game. You're not going to have the story that you want, and you're not going to be able to have the players aren't going to have the fun that you want them to have. So, you're never going to make all the players happy all the time. That's another big thing to remember. This is especially good in LARPs as well. And if you have a player who is not having fun in your story or with a specific adventure that you're doing, don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal. Talk to the player if you have to, even if you don't, just make it up to the next gaming session. If you have a role play heavy encounter and you've got one character who has like no social skills, they're just a big brute, then the next gaming session you can have more fighting or split the party. I know they say never split the party, but split the party and have a fight going on in one scene while you're having a very intense diplomatic discussion happening in another scene at the same time, and have them cross over. You get that two camera effect where you've got the two things that are going on, and they're mimicking each other even though they're completely different, and that can be a fun story to tell as well. But if the player, if it turns out to be the same person over and over and over that keeps having problems and isn't enjoying your game over and over and over and over again, talk to that player. And if you're that player, talk to your GM. Find out if it's even the right story for you or the right game for you or the right group for you, because that might not be the case. You might not be in the right group of players. You might need a different group. And if that's the case, don't feel bad about that. It's better that you find the right group for you than it is for you to sit there and be miserable for every gaming session. There's no reason for that. And this is true of LARPing as well, and let's get into that real quick. In a LARP, there tend to be, as I said before, there are social circles, cliques, as there were. And this is true of any LARP. This is not specific to any particular LARP. This is true of really all human social interaction. Again, we said that already. You want to make sure that each group is enjoying themselves in the game as best as you can, to the best of your ability. And you may not be able to tell the story that is best for every single person on the field. That's just a fact. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find someone else to help you fill that role. In some LARPs, it's called a theme marshal or assistant GMs or however you want to call it. But the idea is that you can run the story that you want to run for the people that enjoy the kind of story you're running. Now, don't pick out a specific group of people and run that story for them. That's not what I'm saying. That's, in fact, very bad. Don't do that. But you can run a story that appeals to a specific genre of player. And if they're having fun with that game, great. If they're not, then find another person who can tell a story that will fit a different niche than yours. And let the players who are not enjoying your game, or your storyline, I should say, try to enjoy this other storyline. And if they're not, maybe you can, if the group of dissatisfied people is large enough, you can find another GM storyteller to assist you. And you can do this and keep doing this until the point where you really don't even have to tell a story if you don't want to as a GM. Of course, I think that GMs should tell stories. That's what you do. It's your job. There are a lot of people who subscribe to the I will manage mentality, a general manager as opposed to a game master. And that's okay. I don't really dramatically fault that mentality unless it is unless you're not meeting the needs of the players story-wise anyway. So like you don't have the staff to meet the needs of the players to begin with. Then you need to step up and tell the story because that's your job. But what it comes down to is if someone isn't having fun, they might not be right for your game. And this is true of LARPing. It's true for tabletop. If you narrow it down, you've got 7 game masters for a game of 200 people, and you've still got a group of 5 or 6 people who are not enjoying the game that anyone is running. You've got nothing that's going on. Your story is still consistent. Nothing is too crazy. They're not. You don't have 2 plots overlapping that are crushing each other, that are greatly conflicting. But you still have a group of people that are not enjoying the game. Maybe the game isn't for them. You You can't make everyone happy all the time, and you can't even really make everyone happy. Well, you can make most everyone happy most of the time. You're going to have bad gaming sessions. They're going to have bad gaming sessions. It is the nature of the beast. One of the things that will help keep your players happy, though, is immediate reward for complicity with the things that you want them to do. So if you have a group of players who are involved in your story and are making excellent strides in the solution finding of your storyline, reward them for that. Show them that they're doing the right thing. Show them that they are accomplishing the goals you want them to accomplish. Role-playing points or better role-playing NPCs or just better interaction in general can do that. You can also give them straight-up rewards. You can be like, here's a piece of candy. Here's a piece of candy. Here's an M&M, for God's sake. One of the things I recommend you do is in a game in 7th Sea, there was a system called the Karmic Die Rule. And what this essentially allowed you to do was the GM had a bowl of something, dice or, chocolate or something. And every time the players did something that was really good, something spectacular, something entertaining, something that met the vision that you had for the story in that moment or often exceeded it, you'd put a piece of chocolate or a dice or something in there that the players could visibly see they have done what you wanted them to do. They have lived up to your hopes and dreams for this storyline. And you can then allow them to use those dice later or those, the candies, those representations to do something else later, like give them a bonus. Let's say in Vampire, I put these dice out there and here you go. You have successfully told an excellent piece of story. You have solved a major event in a way I had anticipated or in a spectacularly awesome fashion. Here's a piece of chocolate in the bowl. You can either eat that piece of chocolate, which means it's gone, have a piece of chocolate, well done, or you can spend that piece of chocolate later and do something special in the game. You can use that to help tell another piece of the story as a reward for helping me tell a better story earlier. At the end of the game, if they're all still there, maybe you get a bonus, like you get extra experience points, or you get to eat a bunch of chocolate. I don't know, whatever the reward is that works best for you and your players. It's a good idea, and it's something I definitely want to talk about in a future episode, ways to encourage the collaboration in the storytelling, because it is all about collaboration. I say it a lot in this podcast. Collaboration is what role-playing is all about. And if you're not collaborating with your players and your players are not collaborating with the GM, then you're not really telling a story so much as you're watching a movie, and you can just turn Netflix on, or you can just turn on the Xbox. And that's not what role-playing is. As much as people say that there are games out there that are role-playing games, like, let's say, one of my all-time favorites, which is Exodus Ultima, or I should say it's Ultima Exodus, which is the third Ultima game. Or like, I don't know, I can't think, like Fable. These aren't really role-playing games. You're not really doing anything different. You're being told the same story that 1,000 other people have been told. Mass Effect may have 3 or 5 different choices on every single quest that you do, but they're still the same quests that everyone else has ever done. So it's not really the kind of it's not collaborative. You're seeing the story, you're interacting with the story that someone else has told. And while that is where tabletop RPGs begin, that is not where they end, and that is not the appeal, truly the appeal, anyways, in my opinion, of role-playing games, of what makes role-playing games great. It is the fact that I'm telling the Mass Effect story, and you decide to do something that's completely off the wall and off script, and we both like it enough that the whole story changes. That is something that you need to reward, because it's going to help you become a better storyteller, and it's going to help you tell a story that is far more engaging and interesting to your players than you had originally intended. Believe me, it's true. Another thing you're going to want to do is sideboard things. And sideboard is absolutely the wrong word. You want to postpone certain discussions when conflicts arise. And I mean conflicts between players and conflicts between the player and the GM. And the reason you want to do that, assume that there's a rules discussion and you make a ruling, but the players don't agree with that ruling. You need to stop the conversation from digressing into a 2-hour argument about rules and people getting mad and throwing books at each other or throwing dice at each other, which do not ever, ever, ever throw dice or pencils in role-playing games. Do not do that, period. The end. Anyway, in order to avoid that, you want to tell the players, or you want to talk with the players and be like, all right, let's go with my ruling for now. We'll talk about it more when the gaming session is over, because you may need that scene to progress in a specific way, and you may be wrong. And if you sideboard or postpone the discussion till after the game is over, you get people to think about it. You get to show why you did the thing you did and tell the story you told. And at the end of the gaming session, you can be like, yeah, it didn't work. Or the players can be like, oh, I see what you did there. That's a cool ruling. I can dig it. Or can we not do that ruling again? Or however you want to do it, whatever. You want to get the players involved in the interpretation of rules in this case. If you sideboard this thing, if you table this discussion until the gaming session is over, you can have the players help you interpret the rules later, and you can start building house rules that will change the game to better suit your storytelling style and their gameplay styles. Like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, for me, or Pathfinder, or whatever you've got. I don't like the way magic works in Pathfinder and D&D. And it's not anything against really the writers of those games. They wrote a system that is very good for what they wanted, but it doesn't fit the kind of stories I like to tell in that type of setting, that kind of system, because the system does determine the way you run your game and the way your setting functions. Again, something we can talk about later. But anyway, I like to have magic work more on a vitality-based system, which is an optional rule in Dungeons and Dragons, but I even modify it from there because it better fits my storytelling technique and style and the elements that I want to get out of the game. But there are a lot of times that rules conflicts come up in this, and we want to make sure that the players and the GM both understand the way the rule is supposed to work and the way it's going to work in the future. Maybe it doesn't work that way this one time. Continuity aberrations. It's a system that has magic in it. You can do anything. There's a reason for anything. Just remember that as a storyteller, you can make anything up, and as long as it makes a semblance of sense, the players will fill in the rest and you'll be okay. Just be consistent. As consistent as you can anyways. There's a limit to this, of course. If you make a ruling that the rope dancing spell works a specific way, then it needs to work that way in the future. It can't be, well, the rope dancing spell worked this way this time, but next time it's not, that's not right. Unless the players are aware ahead of time that this was a one-time only thing, which is where you talk with your players about in the sideboard and with them helping you interpret the rules. You want to make sure that there's as much consistency as you can manage, both in story, in setting, in rules functionality, in storytelling technique and style, although that sometimes changing up can be really good. I give you an example of Hush from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as well as Once More with Feeling. Different storytelling technique to accomplish a very unique and specific goal. So you can do that kind of thing. In fact, I challenge someone out there to have a musical episode of a role-playing game. In fact, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to see if I can do it at some point. And if you record your musical episode of your role-playing game where your players sing all of their things they do and that kind of thing, you guys can write it out ahead of time. That'd be cool too. Film it, record it, whatever, send it to us. And how awesome would that be? That's a fantastic idea. Or a role-playing game session that has absolutely no talking. You can do it. Give it a try. I've actually done that one before, kind of. The GM talks. The rest of people don't really talk. That's kind of your characters certainly never talk. It's a lot of interpretation and a lot of hand gestures. It can get a lot of fun. Don't do it in a serious game unless there's a real good reason for it. Again, it comes back to the take the game as seriously as you want your players to take it. But again, be consistent. And last but not least, you have to admit when you are wrong as a GM. It is extremely difficult to do for some GMs. There is a God complex that definitely comes into play in tabletop RPGs. You get to control the setting. You determine what the players do. And it becomes adversarial, and you don't want that. You don't want the GM to be the adversary of the players. You want the GM to be the guide of the players, guiding them through the story you're telling. So you want to make sure that if you do something wrong, or you say something wrong, or you make an interpretation that is wrong, that the players know you were wrong. It will help you build their trust and confidence, as well as allow you to learn more about the way you tell a story and to change the things you don't like about the way you tell a story. It's a really good idea to be aware and to be self-aware of the story and storytelling you are doing. You can become one of the greatest GMs of all time, even if you can barely write a story, because you can learn to adapt your technique and your storytelling style to what your players want. And while you may not be a good GM for me, and you may not be a good GM for conventions, you can be a great GM for your group. And it all starts with knowing when you're wrong and not letting yourself become the adversary of the PCs, to not be confrontational with your PCs, and managing time. Again, it all comes back to managing time. Every single thing that you do as a GM comes back to managing the flow of story and ideas. So that said, you take these 20 tips I just gave you, which will be online. They'll be in the show notes. You can check them out. You can also listen to the show anytime you want, of course. Listen, share it with your friends. Use the things you learn, and we'll talk more about some of these factors in greater detail in future episodes. But take what you learn and continue educating yourself about pacing. Pacing is important. And in your technique, again, very important. And you can really learn to become one of the premier GMs, at least for your group, even if you can't really manage to be one of the greatest GMs ever. It's just not everyone is cut out to be a GM, but I do believe that everybody should at least try GMing at least once. Use the techniques that I've given you, that I've helped you learn anyways. There's a lot more out there to learn. Storytelling is one of those things, like I said before, you can write volumes on GMing and tabletopping. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns or complaints about the topic that I brought up here today, or any of my points, or you want help running your game, or you have questions about a ruling, or you have a particularly problem player, bring it to me. Email me at podcast@ironandavoid.com, and I will help you better find a way to solve your problems in your game. If you're stuck in a story element or whatever, I really, really enjoy collaborating with other GMs. I think it helps me learn more about the entire environment of role-playing games, and it helps everybody that shares an idea helps contribute to growing the entire industry of role-playing games, and helps the community become better than it already was. And I believe that we're in a really good place in role-playing game community, in the role-playing game community right now. I'm part of a lot of Facebook groups. I'm a part of a lot of Google Plus groups that talk about role-playing games, and I see a lot of brilliant ideas being shuffled around from place to place. And I can't tell you how lucky we are to live in the era that we are in right now when it comes to role-playing games. Companies are beginning to diversify again. We're not stuck in the D20, the open gaming license content. There are brilliant games out there like Call of Cthulhu, Numenaria, Legend of the Five Rings, Lord of the Rings role-playing game, D&D Pathfinder stuff. Again, that's open gaming license, but still Pathfinder is a brilliant game. There are many games out there that are really doing a good job. There's a lot of indie games being developed right now that I can't say enough about, and I will talk about more of them in future episodes. If you are an indie game developer and you want us to talk about your episode, your product on the show, get in touch with me, podcast@ironandavoid.com. We can talk about it. I can bring you on the show and you can have a chance to tell the world about your beautiful product. I will be more than happy to give you critique on my opinions of what the game is about. I have studied more than probably 200 various role-playing games. I study a lot of RPG theory and game design, and I talk about this kind of stuff on a regular basis. So I can at least bring you perspective from a beta tester and a game writer and developer myself, even though nothing I've ever written has ever been published outside of my own gaming group anyway. It's something that if we share our passion for role playing with each other, I think that even if you're just a regular GM, you can learn so much, and I can learn much from you as well. So again, podcast@irnerdivore.com. Send in your thoughts. Let me know what you think of this show. Let me know the things you think about our other shows that we've talked about, that you've heard. Go back and listen to our archives. They're always there for you. It's free. Don't worry. There's no hassle. Some of them are really good episodes. Some of them are not great. I know the sound quality is hit or miss on a lot of episodes. I'm hoping that I can get the sound quality worked out. I think they've been really good lately since I got this new board. So I've got a lot of people who are getting ready to come on the show, who can really help us out in talking more about the GMing side of things and a lot of development in the development side of role playing. So I've rambled for about 5 minutes on this topic alone, so I'm going to be done with that. And again, as always, I want to bring you guys the very best possible show I can every week, and I need your feedback to do that. We've already talked about it. You can send us the email at podcast@irnerdivore.com. I do read all the emails, so I do have some listener feedback I want to get to in the next episode. I'll get to it in the very next episode, I promise. Help us spread the word of this show. Help us spread the word of Geek in general. Tell everybody you know about this show, The Quest. Help them find, go and listen to the Iron Nerdivore podcasts. Listen to the Dark Match podcast if you're into wrestling at all. Help us spread the word. Talk to your local conventions. Help us come out to your shows and help us do everything that we can to spread the passion of geek culture, of any variety, role playing or nerd or whatever it is. Help us spread that to the world at large. We're in like 25 countries now. I think I said already. We really are a lot more successful than I thought we were going to be. I don't do this to be successful. I don't do it to make money, but I do it because I enjoy it, and I really appreciate you guys as fans. So thank you very much again. If you would like to donate to the show to help us do this better and keep it coming to you free, please, you can go online to www.irnerdivore.com/donate and donate whatever you can there. You can also, visit our sponsors. We've got the audible.com. We've got Geek Fan Expo. We've got My Techmatic. We've got Selkie Smooth, Brown Coat Photography. We've got, I'm trying to get some new ones in pretty soon, but we also got Amazon.com. Don't forget to go to irnerdivore.com. Click the banner at the top of the page. It's the Amazon.com banner. Anytime you want to buy something on Amazon.com, please use that banner link, and we'll get a portion of whatever you spend back to us from Amazon as a thank you for being an affiliate with them. And you can show us your support by buying all the same great things that you want at the same great prices you would normally have gotten from Amazon.com, but we get a bit of that love back. We do appreciate that. A lot of people have been using that banner, so thank you guys. Anything else you want to do, especially come Christmas time, it's a great banner to use. You'll be helping out the show a ton. Don't forget to check out Geek Fan Expo 2014, September 5th, 6th, and 7th at the Doubletree Hotel in Dearborn, Michigan. You can check us out online at geekfanexpo.com. Tickets are on sale now. You can get 20% off by using promo code IRNerdivore, IRNERDIVORE, IRNerdivore. 20% off whatever the online registration price is. We're going to have some awesome guests for you guys. I've got Eric Ruth, who is going to be doing a live coding of a video game right there using audience participation. That is fantastic. No one else has done that as far as I know at any convention ever. You guys will be able to help him create a video game specifically and directly for Geek Fan Expo and the nerd fans that are out there. We're also going to have Rob Paulson, the voice of Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. He was a Transformer. He was a G.I. Joe. He was a Gummy Bear. He's Yakko Warner. He's been in everything. He is the voice of your childhood. I promise you. If you were born from 1975 all the way up to if you were born last week, this guy is the voice of your childhood. I promise you. He is fantastic. We're also going to have Timothy Zahn, one of my all-time favorite authors, one of the best storytellers in the Star Wars EU. He's also now writing some new stuff. He's got a couple of he's got a couple of Kickstarters going around. Check this guy out. Timothy Zahn, fantastic. We've got professional cosplayers coming in. We've got a bunch of authors coming to the show. We've got live entertainment events for you. We've got musical guests. We've got DJs. We've got everything that you expect from a convention in a hotel. It's going to be a fun show. Room parties are going to open up in the next couple of days, so you'll be able to do some room parties. Rooms are only $94 a night. You can't beat that price for a 3-day convention. We're going to the Gen Con Gaming Library, 1,500 board games from the largest gaming convention in the entire country, Gen Con in Indianapolis. But their gaming room is going to be coming up to us. We're hopefully going to have the Pathfinder Society out to do some role-playing. I'm hoping to get more GMs. If you want a GM for Geek Fan Expo, please get in touch with me at jharvey, JHARVEY, at geekfanexpo.com, geekfanexpo.com, jharvey at geekfanexpo.com. I can say it so many times. And we will try to get you a table to do some role-playing. We're going to have a 1K Magic tournament. I can't express how freaking awesome this convention is going to be. Get your tickets online now. www.geekfanexpo.com. Use the promo code IRNerdivore. Get your 20% off. And I hope to see you at the show. That should about do it for me today. And on behalf of myself, I didn't have any guests today. I didn't have any co-hosts today. But my dog and my cat were both here. One of them was meowing the entire time, and I'm not going to tell you which one it is. But anyway, I guess all I can say then is may your dice roll ever in your favor.
Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go back to New Orleans. You know it hurts me so. Baby, I'm way down here. You know I'm way down here. Baby, I'm way down here in a rolling fog. Baby, please don't.